Darren Connell, welcome to the Development by David podcast. How are you, my friend?
David, thank you for having me. I'm very good, mate.
Good. I appreciate your flexibility because I cancelled on you last week because I had food poisoning. I always thought food poisoning was one of those excuses that you would use if you were turning up for your part-time job hungover, you didn't want to go in, but it turns out it's a real thing. But you seem like someone that either has a funny food poisoning story or has made a lie about having food poisoning and that being a funny story.
I did judge you for cancelling, by the way.
Why?
I did think he's a psychopath. I don't know why I just instantly went there, but as soon as you cancelled, I was like, he's up to something.
Did you think it was food poisoning?
Nah.
What did you think it was?
Something sinister.
Something really, really bad.
No, I believed you. Food poisoning. I ate a Chinese curry one time and I ended up in hospital with food poisoning. I was like hallucinating and stuff. 5 days, man. I was floored.
What was the name of the curry, do you know?
Just a chicken curry.
For the listeners who don't know who you are, who's Darren Connell today in 2022? Oh, it's weird saying 2022. It's my first podcast in the studio of the year.
Yes, I would say I'm a stand-up comedian that lives in Scotland. I've been a stand-up comedian since I've been 22, and I've done a wee bit of acting and panto and stuff. Feels a wee bit weird with your two pals sitting watching me, I know, by the way.
They're out of the shot, but yeah, it does feel like a live show or something.
Yeah, except they're emotionless and not making any noise, and
they've not paid to be here either.
They're not blinking.
I'm a bit of a Scottish comedy amateur nerd. Like, I remember living in my working class household. Instead of watching like the tweenies growing up, my dad literally subjected us to Chewing the Fat. I think I knew every swear word growing up. We didn't go to church as a kid, but every Sunday I was told that Billy Connolly was God, and we watched an audience with him. Big fan of Robert Florence and Ian Connell, Still Game, like. And then as a teen, I found Bridges, Boyle, Mark Nelson. So obviously, I would come across you at some point in that mix. So I thought my fandom for you was quite unique or quite nerdy. But I was telling my auntie last week, the night I got food poisoning, that I'm going to meet or podcast with Bobby from, and she interrupted me and said, Darren Connell from Scot Squad. And then that was kind of a weird kind of pinch me moment of, he is more widespread than I actually thought. And then later on, we bumped into her friend, and the first thing she said was, you'll never guess who David's podcasting with tomorrow. And then she also went on to tell me that my two cousins who live in Australia, to satisfy their little bit of home, would watch Scot Squad.
No way.
How does that feel, hearing that?
Aye, that's mental. Obviously, it makes me feel nice. I just think I'm like famous within a mile of my house. I never really think anything like that. I've had I was doing panto once in Dundee, and the person that I was getting digs from, she says her daughter stayed in New York and she used to follow me in Vine and she watched Scot Squad and stuff. So that's pretty surreal because I wouldn't even say I'm famous. I hate that word. I just want to make people laugh. It certainly wasn't the goal. I just want to make people laugh, and I'm lucky enough to get paid for it. Back in the day when I was working in Asda, I never thought that, you know, people from Australia would be watching Scot Squad, or even the numbers. They said The View, I think apart from Still Game, the Still Game's the most viewed, then it's Scot Squad's the second. I don't know what it is now, but just hearing that stuff in your head is strange.
I don't know if my algorithm's been like tampered because I've been watching all your stuff the last few weeks, but every time I go on Facebook now, there's always at least a Scot Squad thing shared. If it's not Scot Squad, it's you. I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg's on my case or something like that, but literally like every fourth post, fifth post has been Scot Squad or you. But when I have people like my auntie say, oh, Bobby from Scot Squad, or people call you Bobby from Scot Squad, how do you take that? Because it's the character and the persona that's getting the praise and not like you as a person. Does that ever kind of have an effect on you?
No, not really. I mean, I think working as a trolley boy for 10 years just made me humble, man. Like, I'll take anything I can get. But it's nice. It is nice. And if anybody, people call me Bobby all the time. If I'm doing panto, if there's kids there, they call me Bobby. Or if somebody recognises me in the street, it'll be Bobby. And I would never be insulted by that, or I wouldn't ever take it any other way than a positive, because people say that they enjoy the show and they think I'm funny. So they can call me Darren, they can call me Bobby.
You've been called worse, probably.
Aye, defo. Especially at gigs. But yeah, I take it nothing. There's no other way I take it other than a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
And did you develop that character yourself?
It was a bit of everything. I've told this story a few times. I went in for the audition, and the auditions process was so surreal that they said that they never told me this, I never knew any of this. They said, that guy's funny, but he's too mental, so we can't give him a part, because if he's a police officer, it will be too cartoonish or weird. And then Joe Hewlett, the creator, said, well, why don't we make a character for him? And I think Joe was like, we could make him a pest that annoys a police officer, or he goes into a police station as a recurring theme. And then I went in when I found out that I was going to get it, and we brainstormed. So I came up with Bobby Muir. I came up with basically the majority of the stuff, but if it wasn't for Joe, I wouldn't have got a part in it.
Jeez. And what was the thought process behind developing like Bobby himself? Like, what came to mind? Was it a reflection of someone you knew at school, or someone when you worked at Asda that you worked with, or something like that?
See, it was such a strange situation, and I never ever thought it would have been. I never thought it would have turned out the way that it turned out. It was like my first acting gig, the first thing I ever done, the first audition I done. So I was still working in Asda, and I was kind of open spot comedian going into part-time, kind of paid. So everything was so new. I took a lot of things from like Bobby. I called him Bobby because there was a comedian called Gus Lindburn, and he's based in Edinburgh. And for some strange reason, he used to call me Bobby Dazzler. And it's just called me it for years, right? Every time he seen me, he shouted Bobby Dazzler. And it was like so weird and funny. It's always stuck with me. So I thought, I'll keep Bobby because he calls me Bobby Dazzler. And Muir was from a comedian called Jim Muir that plays a character called the Reverend Obadiah Steppenwolf the Third. And he was on the Live Floor. Do you ever remember a show called the Live Floor Show?
No.
It was on BBC Scotland about 20 years ago. I think Frankie Boyle made his debut on it. It was all the best of Scottish comedians. And this Reverend guy came out. I mean, his name's Jim Muir. He was born in Dunfermline, but I was a wee guy when I was watching it, and he comes out as an American preacher with a wig on and a gown and stuff. And I was like, is that actually an American preacher? Because he was so good at it. And years later, I seen him at the stand, and I'm sitting in the crowd and I'm watching him, and I'm like, there was just wee tiny parts of his movement and stuff. I was like, he's not American, man. That's a character act. But he was so good. It was just a wee like crack in the armour that made me think that's not real. And then I seen somebody walk out the back, and he never had his costume on, and I was like, you're a character act. And his name was Jim Muir. I think he wrote for Frankie Boyle, he's wrote for Jimmy Carr, used to be an amazing stand-up comedian. I don't really know what he's up to now. So I just thought at one point he was one of my heroes, and I just took his surname, just purely as a
Took his surname.
tip of the hat. Aye. I feel like that. So it was just a kind of a tip of the hat to somebody that I loved in the Scottish comedy circuit. And then Bobby's character, like, no much thought processes went into it. I used to be a trolley boy. I made Bobby a trolley boy. Like, it was kind of just on the spot, like, on the spot in the comedy unit saying, aye, make him a trolley boy. I used to get nicknamed, this is early episodes, there's an American football player called Fridge. I think he was a black guy, he was like 25 stone or something. my brother's boss used to call me Fridge when I was young. Like when I was like 10 years old. See, anytime he drove past us in the street, he actually used to shout out the window, Fridge. And he never meant it in a harsh way or a cruel way. I just always found it really funny. And I remember thinking when I was getting into comedy, I thought, I'm going to use that for something. I never thought it would have been that. So I called Bobby's dog Fridge because that was my nickname as a kid. The guy still calls us Fridge. See, the funny thing about it as well, he's the only person that calls me Fridge. And see, he still shouts at me and stuff, and I answer to it. Sometimes I just bump into him and he's like, all right, Fridge. And I'm like, all right, mate.
Mate, Scotland has the weirdest nicknames. You don't get this like in any other country. You wouldn't get this south of the border. We have a mate and his nickname is Soup. He's
Soup.
Literally Soup. And he goes by Soup. I wouldn't be surprised if his name is Soup on a passport somewhere, because, and Taylor, I don't know the exact story, but I think he basically ate soup for lunch every single day at primary school. So he got nicknamed Soup, and then as he progressed, even into the workplace and all that, his nickname is Soup. And he actually, it's strange when people have nicknames like this, because I'm not going to lie, mate, you look like a fridge, and he looks like a soup.
I built like a fridge.
Built like soup, that's worse.
He looks like a tin of fucking homemade soup. I know a guy called Bert. Calling him Bert for years. Like my entire childhood, everybody called him Bert. And I phoned his house one night and I was like, is Bert in? And his dad was like, Alan, it's the phone. I was like, who the fuck is Alan? Am I allowed to swear? I'm sorry. I'm like, who's Alan? And he's like, he gets called Bert because he looked like Bertie Bassett. And he was just get called Bert. So never knew his name was Alan.
We spoke about Bob, we spoke about the creation of that character. Let's talk about your childhood, mate. What was it like growing up? Where did
it's
you
a
grow
bit
up?
deep, fuck.
What were you like as a child?
Well, people called me Fridge, so it was horrific. What do you think? What do you mean I look like a fridge as well, you cheeky bastard? What kind of fridge? I hope for Argos or something?
No, one of those like chested ones, the wee small stumpy ones.
That's cool. That's cool.
The ones that always freeze over and leak.
Right, what do you mean what my childhood was like? Like, you need to give me something else to kind of answer that. My dad didn't love me. My mother was never present.
There you go. I think that's the bait into it. Nah, I mean, you're a creative, right? Like, school doesn't support creativity. It's designed to mold employees. Did you feel like that? Did you feel frustrated at school when you were there? Did you know it didn't serve you? Because I know you speak openly about how you didn't really do that well and you weren't really invested in it.
So you've done your research, yeah?
Done my research. Right?
Yes.
I spoke with all your teachers.
Oh no. Childhood was strange. It wasn't like a bad childhood, but I definitely felt different in primary school, and I couldn't pay attention. Just never took to anything. I get put into this group. It was the red group.
I was about to ask about that.
Aye, the red group, the green group, and the yellow group. And the red group's full of fucking people that are called Fridge. Or Soup. But it was just like for early on I realised this is not for me, struggling as well. But it doesn't mean I had a bad childhood. I had a good childhood. My household was good. My mum, probably one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. And then my mum's family as well. Just a family full of crackpots for Penny that were just naturally funny and mental. Like, I find out some stuff about my granddad as I get older, and I'm like, he sounds like probably should have been on some type of medication. Do you know what I mean? My mum told us that he used to be amazing at accents. So anytime he took her to a car boot sale or just anywhere really into like a charity shop, he used to talk to people in different accents, but he was so good that they thought he was like Irish or English. And I don't know why he did it. He just did it as a piss take or a bam up. And my brother as well get this kind of weird funny story about him. He used to carry props about with him, like a fake thumb and fake ears and stuff. So he used to walk in I can't remember exactly how it went, but I think my brother said he bumped into somebody in the town and shook his hand as he had this fake thumb on his hand, and he never said anything. He never broke character. He never done anything. So but when I was younger, I remember going to see my granddad and going into his room, and he just had all this like posters of Laurel and Hardy and the Marx Brothers and all this kind of film stuff that was like Harold Lloyd and stuff. I don't know if you've heard of him. Like really silent comedians for the 1920s.
We had a ornament of Laurel and Hardy in the house growing up.
Yes.
Don't know the rest.
So his like film knowledge of like James Cagney films and stuff was just incredible. And even though I was only 5 or 6, maybe 7, I remember watching that and thinking, God, that is so fascinating. So I think he probably planted the seed with the comedy. But all my uncles and all that, they're just mental, but funny.
It's weird that you say that, because if I reflect on people that I know who have perhaps had parents in traditional corporate jobs where seriousness was like praised, I've noticed them not be the funniest people in the room, but people who have been around parents who have been funny, or grandparents that have had crazy stories from their youth, you often see them go on to embrace the funniness in the household, and perhaps you could be thankful to your parents for having that dynamic growing up.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my dad's quite a serious guy. I think my dad's really intelligent. He's got a really dry sense of humour. I think I get the dryness and the straight face from my dad, then I get the weirdness from my mum's side. But yeah, I'm grateful for the way that I get raised.
One of the funniest anecdotes I heard in your podcast when listening to you was that you used to lie a lot as a kid in class. I think it was a kind of goalkeeper story. Can you tell me about that?
Yes. I lied that I signed for Celtic as a goalkeeper as the third choice. I think it was the third choice. It wasn't first team. I don't think I said first team. It wasn't as crazy as that. But I think it was my English teacher. And I used to just sit and make noises in class, right? Anytime she turned her back, I was like, meh. And one day she snapped and she grabbed us and she's like, you'll never be anything in your life. And she asked us, like, back before teachers get the sack, she's like, is there something wrong with you? Like, is there actually something wrong with your head? Because you'll never be anything when you leave school. And I was like, well, I signed for Celtic. Straight away. As a goalkeeper. And she was like, what? And I told her, quite weird because I started to believe it. I was like, I'm a goalkeeper full time. I start next year.
Please don't tell me you started training at the back garden. Method acting.
I fuck knows how she believed me, because I did not look like a goalkeeper. I was like 5 stone heavier than what I am now. Big greasy fringe down to my eyebrows. Never went to gym in my life. I was just like, I am a goalkeeper. And
she believed it?
Yeah, I think so.
It's mental. I have some lies from my childhood. I remember, and it's probably my most mortifying moment of my entire life, where my dad, as most dads do, lied to me and said that he invented the cheese beano. That he invented cheese on toast up with beans. And I went into, I think, show and tell at the time, and told the entire class, like, chest, like, bursting it, hand on heart, like, guys, you'll never guess who my dad is. Wait till he patents this, the inventor of the cheese beano, and everyone just erupted. And I actually started, like, I think I was known as Cheese Beano probably behind my back for the rest of primary school, I don't know.
Soup is feeling very relieved, like, finally. Imagine if your dad did invent it though, that would have been...
Imagine you just heard in the playground, there's a Cheese Beano soup in fridge. You get a fright.
Aye, Cheese Beano, soup, fridge, out.
And there's another lie that I got, what I thought was a lie until I found out last Friday. And my auntie's going to kill me for sharing this. Apparently my cousin dated Russell Brand growing up, and she told me that at school. When I was at school, I went into class again, second time round, getting absolutely humiliated. No, your cousin doesn't go out with Russell Brand, or didn't go on a date with Russell Brand. Turns out, only last Friday I found out it was actually true, and he came up and visited her in Glasgow.
Oh, really?
I don't know the nature of the relationship, that's all I knew, but I was slagged for being the Cheese Beano, the son of the inventor of Cheese Beano,
Yeah.
and the cousin of the guy, the woman that didn't date Russell Brand. But turns out one of them is the least true.
and it's probably the one that you don't want to be true.
The Cheese Beano.
That your cousin get pumped off Russell Brand.
Darren, how does someone get into comedy? I can't imagine it being like football where scouts come along and pick you up if you're talented. Surely there wasn't a scout coming along to your classroom or around to Asda to see how funny you were to pick you up. How does someone get into comedy?
It's quite weird because I never knew you could get comedy clubs. So I went to college and I did television production and sound recording. And the first time I ever heard of a comedy club was a guy in the class was, because I went there, I think I'm dyslexic. Somebody told me I was dyslexic. It's never been confirmed, but a teacher in college, I went for a test and they told us I was dyslexic, and nothing has ever happened since. And it wouldn't be surprised if I was dyslexic, but if there's something there that I'm not really interested in, I just black out as well. Like, it has to be something that I enjoy to get into. So I went to do television production and sound recording, and I realised I didn't enjoy it. I wanted to maybe do acting, but I never realised you could get drama school. Just for a working class upbringing, nobody I knew done acting. So it seemed so unrealistic that you could go to college and go through a process of going to drama school and stuff, because nobody was there to tell me you could do that. So I went and did television production because I thought that would be acting. Stupidly, it isn't. And I'm sitting in class, I lost interest and I just started being a class clown, really, to amuse myself. And a guy was like, do you know, you're funny, man, you should do stand-up comedy. And first time in my life, I just thought, how could you do that? And he said, the Stand Comedy Club. And the first thing I said was, what's the Stand Comedy Club? He's like, it's a comedy club in Glasgow. And I just thought, like a light just went off in my brain. I was like, I can't believe that there's a comedy club in Scotland. I thought it was just an American thing, and just so young and naive to that full thing. So he planted the seed, and I started going to the Stand Comedy Club as a punter. And I started going when I was 18. And when I quit the TV course, I went and did another course. It was Barber College. It was 9 months to be a barber. I don't know why I done that. Just on the spot decision, because I was like, I need to get a trade. So what's the shortest trade you can get? 9 months to be a barber. And it was shite. And I was dogging the class. I went into college, but I decided to dog the class. So I was just walking about the college, bored.
Cutting people's hair randomly.
Like walking about the hallways, just walking in and out of empty classes and stuff. I've definitely got something wrong with my head, by the way, saying this out loud. And I noticed a poster on the wall and it just said, stand-up comedy course ran by Charlie Ross, stand-up comedian, 10-week course, gig at the end of the course. And I took the bit of paper and I thought, God, man, there's a stand-up comedy course. And I got in touch with him and I started doing the course. I ended up doing a gig as well, but I was really shit. And I just thought, if I go and do this course, that'll help me. So essentially, if you wanted to be a stand-up comedian in Scotland, you can get 5 minutes at Red Raw in Glasgow on a Tuesday night, or Red Raw on Monday at the Stand in Edinburgh. But there's so many nights now that are looking for new talent that you could just go and watch the night, and then you can talk to the compere after it and say, look, I'm a new start. Could you give me 5 minutes? But that's how I got into it back then. I got in touch with Red Raw and I did the comedy course.
See, I didn't think you could learn from the outside, and I didn't think you could learn to be funny. Like, is there a specific methodology or like framework that you can follow to become funny if you're not typically already funny?
See, I personally think I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't think you can be taught how to be funny. You're either funny or you're not funny. You can be a diamond in the rough, big time, like rough around the edges, and through experience and through watching comedians and going to live comedy shows, you can become your own person and eventually find your own voice. But I think it's just you're either funny or you're not funny. I went to that course and it taught me a lot of things that I didn't know. I didn't know what a compare was. I was just such in my wee bubble in my own wee life that I never knew what a compare was, didn't know what an open spot was, a headliner, never knew, how long people done. So it taught me about that.
But these are things you could probably pick up from just doing it, like just starting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you were to give advice to someone who is listening because they've seen your name and they want to be a stand-up comedian, would you say go on a course, or would you say just immerse yourself, find an open mic somewhere and just get immersed?
I would say there's no harm in doing a course because you get to meet people. I mean, I met some people on that course that I'm still friends with. None of them are still doing stand-up, but, I'm friends with the guy that ran the course. And, I mean, a lot of things fell into my place. I remember I was doing his course and the teacher of the course said, have you heard of the Scottish Comedian of the Year competition? I was like, no, I've not heard of that. And he's like, it's a big competition in Scotland. You enter it and you get a chance to win it. And if you win it, you can do a solo show in Australia. And I was like, mate, I think I'm too late. Like, I've not entered it. I don't know where it is. So he said to the guy that runs it, he's like, Darren Connell's like a new guy. Is it alright if he enters it? And I ended up getting into the final.
What?
So if it wasn't for that course and if it wasn't for the teacher helping me, I wouldn't have got to the final. And when I got to the final for the next year, I probably gigged about 200 times. And I think it was through getting to the final.
And do you think comedy or success in comedy is denoted to who you know and what spots you can get, opposed to actually how funny or good your content is?
I think really it boils down to if you're funny.
Really?
Yeah. Because there's a lot of bitter people and it really just comes down to if you're funny or you're not funny and how hard you work. Because it's like a lot of people say to me, oh, how come you're knowing this and how come you're knowing that? I'm a self-employed stand-up comedian. I get paid. I'm in a TV show. I do panto. I sell out solo shows. I don't want to be famous. I'm quite happy like earning a living, and if I sell out to 100 people or 200 people, I'm cool with that. I don't want, the hydro or stuff. But don't get me wrong, if it came, I would take it. But that's no the goal. That was never the goal for me. The goal for me was to no work in ASDA anymore. I know that's probably not a high goal in life, but that's the way my life was. It just kind of fell into place, and that was it.
Talk about your time in ASDA. Like, I remember there's a famous story where a certain prolific Scottish comic convinced you to just pack it in and go full time.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that, and who was it?
It was Kevin Bridges, and I was doing a gig with him. See, when I think about it now, I'm actually embarrassed. Like, I was doing a gig with Kevin Bridges and Frankie Boyle at the Stand, and I had to pull a sickie. So they never gave me it off, and I pulled a sickie to gig with them. And I remember sitting in the green room with Frankie Boyle and Kevin Bridges, and I'm like, I'm going to get the sack, man. I'm going to get the sack for my job. And Frankie Boyle's sitting there going over his notes, not even fucking aware that I'm probably even in the room. And Kevin's like, what? And he's like, I'm getting the sack for my job, mate, if I go in tomorrow. And he's like, you're a stand-up comedian, you cunt? And I was like, what? And he's like, you're a stand-up comedian. Anything else is a bonus, but you're a stand-up comedian. And I was just I think it was just riddled with insecurity. Like, you see, to live a life when you don't... The only thing I knew about stand-up was Eddie Murphy, Billy Connolly. I never knew you could get stand-up comedy clubs. I never knew that was real. Even Billy Connolly, I just thought, I don't know if it was the type of childhood I had. I just never knew I never knew there was a path there.
Mm-hmm.
So I always thought there was something like, even, I mean, my family support me now, but I remember saying to my brother before I did stand-up, I want to be a stand-up comedian, and straight away, what do you want to do that for? You need to get a trade. So that was kind of what I was surrounded with. I was surrounded with negativity. And by that stage, I was doing stand-up for a couple of years, and Bridges was just like, you need to pursue this. And don't get me wrong, I kind of knew it, but as soon as he told me, I felt like I had a weight took off my back. So he told me, and then I went into my work and I just quit.
You just went in and quit
Yeah.
there on the spot?
Yeah.
And did you tell them what you were quitting for?
I did. Because by that, I was just like, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian. I actually said that out loud. I'm going to pursue my dream of being a stand-up comedian.
Was that the first time you actually publicly kind of announced that?
Yeah, because I kept it quiet and I never told anyone. But if any of my pals for Asda added me on Facebook and stuff, they seen me punting gigs. But yeah, that was a good feeling. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had jobs since and I've had to work part-time places. It's not like been a Hollywood lifestyle since then, but to realise in your mind that, right, this is my goal, there's nothing holding me back now. It was a great feeling. But yeah, I went in and quit in the spot, and I remember looking at my payslip anyway. My payslip at that point, I was just cancelling shifts and giving shifts away. So I think I kept my last Asda payslip until recently. I think I lost it. It was £55. And I remember thinking I was so crippled with anxiety over a £55 payslip, when at that stage I started to get paid more for doing gigs. I just thought, why did I get lost in that insecurity?
I've seen you podcasts with the likes of like Greg Hemphill and some of these big names that have obviously made some serious money from doing what they do. And people might look from the outside in, similar to other careers, that they might think that there's so much money in it because, look, Billy Connolly's retired, you've got Greg Hemphill and Ford Kieran who's probably cashed in on still game. The reality is that's not the case when you start off, right? I've heard stories that you were travelling to Inverness for like 20 quid.
Yeah.
And things like that. Can there be money in it, and what's the actual reality of it?
The reality is, if you're expecting money from it, don't do it. If you've got a family or kids or whatever, a mortgage, don't do it thinking that you're going to get money, because it's just not going to happen. I mean, I did 100. I remember the first time I get paid, it was a £10 cheque from the Glasgow Comedy Festival, and that was like my 100th gig. And shortly after that, a promoter gave us £6. He just went into his pocket and done that. There's your bus fare. And I remember having that cheque, and I'm like, I'm never going to cash that. I'm going to keep that forever. Cashed it the next day, obviously, but even with the money that the promoter gave me, I thought it was like golden nuggets. I ended up getting a chippy with it, so there you go. But I don't expect. I think you need to go in with just, I want to be funny. I want to make people laugh, and then if you do get paid, it's going to take a long time.
What comes to mind now is that it would be easy for me, and this is me being a fucking logical person, is that because money is numeric, I would tie how much of that to how funny I am. So the more I got paid, the higher I am in terms of the funniness hierarchy, right? But that's not the case. Like, how do you measure how funny you are then? Is it by the amount of laughs you get, by the size of the crowd, if you sell out, or is it by how much money you make?
It's never how much money I make. If I had that mentality, I probably would be in a better position in life. I mean, if the Stand Comedy Club is a 220 capacity, if I get a solo show at the Stand and I sell that out, I've classed that as a success. There's only so much, like, what else can I do? I've been given a venue, I sell it out, I do a show at it. 220 people are there and they're laughing. I don't think you can get any better than that. And people compare the still game with the hydro and stuff. I mean, look at it this way, right? Greg Hempel was doing still game in Tune the Fat 20 years ago. Their first show was at Cottier's Theatre in the West End in front of 300 people. And it's took them 20 years to eventually do a solo show at the Hydro. So they've earned that through blood, sweat and tears. Even Kevin Bridges think he was an overnight success. He was a stand-up comedian on the circuit for years before he broke into the scene. So when he was on Live at the Apollo in Glasgow, he was a comedian for 8 years,
Really?
non-stop, thousands of gigs all over Britain, all the time. So he earned that. People see, I was like that before I did stand-up. I just thought, oh, there's Billy Connolly, that's just a funny guy. But you don't realise that all this work and all this stage time goes into them getting there, especially Still Game. I mean, Still Game is... I mean, I think Still Game's always been amazing, but didn't they take a break for 9 years or something?
Yeah.
And then they came back, and then that's when they really just... They went fucking incredible when they came back.
Yeah.
Even though they were always amazing.
They're like a hallmark in Scottish culture. Like, you'll go down the street and you'll hear kids like quote it all the time.
Yeah.
And I honestly, if they were in a park anywhere, I can imagine there'd be queues of people around them, because they're just, no matter who you are, you've probably seen them on Still Game. Do you ever worry about getting to that level? Do you want to become to that level? And then if you do, are you worried about it?
I think it's genuinely never entered my mind. Like, maybe I'm just different from other people. I don't look at people like Kevin Bridges and Greg and Ford and think I want to be that. When it comes to comedy, like, I just want to make people laugh, and if I'm doing it through Scot Squad and my own stuff, then I'm cool with that. Anytime I've been given a chance to do something, I think I do it well. So if something was down the line that I did get a chance to do my own show, I would do it. 100% I would do it. And if the positive consequences of that were to get into their position, then I wouldn't complain. But if I got to say I was 50 or something and something happened, if I was to look back and what I've done, I'd be happy with what I've done so far. I mean, if I won the lottery tonight, see if I won £1 million in the lottery tonight, I probably would never gig again, to be honest. I'm not setting my life up to be, was he a successful comedian? It's like, I think I've had this chat with my dad. I know we were having a laugh about Celtic. It's like, see if you were a professional football player for Kilmarnock and Hibs and Aberdeen, but you never played for Celtic or Rangers, some people would class you as a failure, even though you were a professional football player for 15 years doing what you love. So it's like, fair enough, you never played for Celtic or Rangers, but you still done what you love. Yeah. And that's what I feel like I'm like. I'm still a professional stand-up comedian. It's like when you get, because I never went to drama school, and I'm like, Scot Squad's 7 seasons now. And I think to be in a police show when I'm not playing a police officer is good, but somebody will be like, oh, it'd be good if you get River City. But then I know people in River City that people will say, it'll be good if you get EastEnders, or if it'd be good if you get Coronation Street. I'm sure people say that to Greg and Bridges about stuff. Like, it's never really, nothing's ever good enough.
I was about to ask you that. Like, some people's dream would be to be in a BBC comedy show, but some other people's dream would be to play at the Apollo or do Soho or something like that.
Yeah.
And I reached out to a couple of comedians that I know, and one's more so of I want to say professional speaker, but she'll hate me for saying that. She is a comedian, but she asked, I told her that you were coming on, and she went, oh, Darren won't know who I am, but I've got a question for him.
Who is it?
She's called Tony Kent. I'll send you her work. I've recorded a podcast with her. She's really, really great. but she doesn't do the circuit. And she was wondering, can she still class herself as a comedian even though her main mode of work is to go into organisations and make employees laugh about serious topics?
I think some comedians would probably say no. I'm going to say yes. If she's standing in front of a crowd making people laugh, it's stand-up comedy. It might be a different form of stand-up. I think I heard Frankie Boyle say that about Ricky Gervais. He's saying he's not a real stand-up, but it's a form of stand-up. I don't know if I agree with that. I think he's a stand-up comedian. Frankie Boyle's a stand-up comedian. Ricky's a stand-up comedian. I mean, it's different because you're getting comedians that are selling out massive venues now, and I think they're sketch comedians like Paul Black. Paul Black is amazing. He's got funny bones. The guy is hilarious. Yep. I don't know if he's a stand-up comedian, but he's standing in front of 3,000 people making them laugh. So I think he's like Lemmy, like the way Lemmy is. Lemmy's not really a stand-up comedian, is he?
No.
But he's probably one of the funniest people ever. So if I was her, I wouldn't get too wrapped up in what she would want to call herself. If she's earning a living and she's making people laugh, then I would say she's a stand-up comedian.
Yeah, she's doing exactly that.
I wouldn't say you were a stand-up comedian if you were an open spot, though. It's like, if you've done 5 gigs or 6 gigs, then you're not a stand-up comedian. You need to
How do you earn it? When do you look at your arm and like, all right, okay, I've earned my stripes? What moment?
So I think I've heard a comedian says you have to do 100 gigs before you say that you're an open spot. And I think I earned my stripes when I think I thought, right, there's 2 major things. When I went self-employed and I got an accountant. So that was when I was sitting with my accountant and he was like, right, what do we put down? Entertainer or actor or stand-up comedian? So that was a surreal moment. But when I sold my solo show out at the Stand Comedy Club was a feeling I think I can say I'm a stand-up comedian now. I did my first gig at the Stand in Glasgow on a Tuesday night, and then I sold out my solo show. It was a Friday night, and it was at 10:30 at night, and I think I was like, yeah, I'm a stand-up comedian.
I think the second feeling of selling out the Stand must have been a better feeling than having to go to an accountant because you now have to pay tax because you're actually earning for doing what you love.
Aye. But what a feeling of like, because stand-up comedy is a weird thing. Nobody can help you. You need to do it yourself. You're either funny or you're not funny. You can get pally with comedians like Kevin Bridges or Frankie Boyle, or that's the kind of myth of he wouldn't be where he was if it wasn't for
XYZ.
Yeah, or she wouldn't be somewhere if it wasn't for a female comedian helping her. There's only so much these people can do. I mean, if Kevin Bridges gave me a 5-minute gig at one of his gigs and I was shite, then what? He's obviously no helped me, but people are no there to see me. They're there to see Kevin Bridges. They're there to see Frankie Boyle.
I've listened to Adam Rowe and Dan Nightingale. I'm not sure if you've heard of those comedians before.
Yes.
Yeah, I really, really love their work. And they were saying that sometimes the way, if you're a support act, sometimes the way the main act sets you up is basically the decider on whether you make it or break it. If they say, I've got a really great friend coming on, he's really, really funny, you'll love some of his stuff, it's quite like mine, it usually goes quite well. But if then, on the converse to that, if you were to not be introduced by them, be introduced by a random compere or just go on as the first act, then usually it's harder to get the buy-in of the audience that is not aware of your work yet. So perhaps the way, if you are related to some sort of amazing comedian and you're supporting them, perhaps that does have a little bit of an effect if they frame you up right.
Yeah.
Have you had someone big you up before a live performance?
Yeah, I've had Bridges has been kind. He's been very kind to me.
They said on that podcast I listened to with Adam and Dan that he's probably the best in the industry for doing that to his support acts.
Bridges?
Yeah, Bridges.
Yeah, he's the perfect example of, you know, just work hard, be funny, and it will happen, because he's essentially the next Billy Connolly, as cliched and cheesy as that might sound. The guy's a genius, and he's the most naturally funniest person I've ever met in my life. The guy has got funny bones, like definition of a genius at comedy, and he's just the most laid back guy you'll ever meet. There's no insecurity with him. There's no jealousy, because stand up can be quite cutthroat and harsh, and I've never seen that with him.
Who's the funniest person that you've met? Would it be Bridges?
The funniest person I've met,
and that's just naturally funny, not like funny on stage, just the kind of who's got the most natural hilarity when you've met them, professionally or not.
I say my mum's pretty funny. She is very funny, man. I've got an uncle that's really funny as well. My granddad was hilarious. And comedian wise, I love Vic and Bob. See Bob Mortimer?
Yeah.
I'd say he's up there with, maybe when I was younger, I watched Shooting Stars. Am I showing my age?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But first of all, I didn't know who Meatloaf was before we started recording. Now I don't know Shooting Stars.
Yeah, I'm like, are you a fucking Mormon or something? Like, you need to start watching the telly, mate. Shooting Stars was an amazing show that I watched when I was younger. It was a fake kind of talk show. Paul, what's that? Somebody's kind of bumped it. You know that guy that does Avid Marion? Lee Francis is doing a show, and it's like a fake talk show now.
Celebrity Juice.
Celebrity Juice. So he's essentially took that idea from Vic and Bob. They were famous back in the 90s, and it was just, they used to get these amazing guests on, like really top professional actors as well, if they were to punt a film that they were in or a book that they were written or something. So they used to make up fake questions, and then, you know, Matt Lucas, the guy from Little Britain,
Yeah.
he was a score guy. So his name was George Doles, and he was dressed up as a baby. He used to play the drums. So some serious actors went on there thinking that this is a chance for me to punt my new film, and Vic and Bob used to just rip the piss at them. So Celebrity Juice is, I think, mimicked on that, but essentially it's Vic and Bob. So I remember watching Vic and Bob when I was a kid, and really they were the funniest. They weren't the stand-up comedians, you know,
No.
but they were the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
When you were Bobby and Scot Squad, and obviously all the other characters were like bounded by like having to be a serious police person, but you could be whatever you wanted to as Bobby. Was it improvised? And like, did you ever have that moment where you just burst out laughing at yourself or some of the stuff that you came up with?
Well, it is improvised. It's like 90% improv. So they'll give you a wee sheet, and it'll be like Bobby runs into the station with a bag of cans, and then I improv off that situation or idea.
Is that easy for you?
At first it was awful, because I was used to be a stand-up comedian. I feed off a crowd, whether it's positive or negative. So if I'm getting booed or somebody says I'm shite, at least I know I'm shite. But when I'm standing in a TV set and it's complete silence, I'm thinking, oh my God, is this funny? So, but I'm used to it now. I'm used to improving now. And I've even applied that to my stand-up as well. I'll kind of go up with an idea and then just riff the rest of it.
Oof.
And if something's funny from it, then I take it and work on it and turn it into a bit. But we're laughing all the time on the set all the time. Sometimes the camera guy's laughing or whatever, or the silliness of the situation, or sometimes when you're stressed, you can just giggle as well. So me and Karen, and there's a new girl in called Officer Sharon. She giggles, and aye.
I remember watching it the other day, and it was the random scene where you walk in, fall face first, forget why you ran in, leave, and then turn around and say, "Oh, Officer Karen," I can't remember exactly what you say, but it's like, "Oh, I meant to tell you that I've had no sense of smell since the age of 5." Like, was that just off the cuff?
Yeah, that was improv. Aye, that was improv. I don't know how that happens. I think you're just on the spot, you're under pressure, and you just come up with. I mean, some of it is shite as well. You get free takes. It's so quick. It's so fast. We get free chances at each scene. So maybe that was just one of the three that was the best.
Wow. What was COVID like for a performer?
Oh, it was awful.
Were you still working?
No. I think within the space of 4 days, I lost everything. Like, everything was gone. Just crazy. We were on the set of Scot Squad, and it get cancelled on the spot. They were just like, lockdown, government lockdowns happened. We need to go back to the van and kind of close off and back into our normal gear. Sitting in my house the next day thinking, what the hell happened there? I've got an old school paper diary that my agent sends me, and I remember just sitting there with a pen, just doing that, cancelling all my gigs. So it was just instant. Everything was away, and I don't think I did it. I only started gigging back there.
You took time off, didn't you?
Yeah, I took, because I decided to see the Zoom gigs and stuff. That wasn't for me. So Friday the 13th of March 2020 was my last show.
Did you not fancy going to one of those drive-in cinemas to perform?
I got offered it, but I think for some reason I just decided to not be involved. I don't even really know the main reason. I think you just need a crowd, a real crowd. And I don't judge people for doing it because you need to earn a living. But
so what did you do during COVID?
I just decided to take a break and worked with pals and done other things that weren't comedy related.
And does it feel having to go back and do normal work again and not what you enjoy? Is it almost the same feeling of coming up as it was the first time you did it?
Not really, because I think COVID made it, everyone's in the same boat. We were all struggling, and I thought, I just need to work. And it wasn't like I wasn't getting offered the comedy stuff. I was getting offered it, but I thought I was doing this since I was 22. A pandemic's happened. I don't really want to make people laugh, to be honest. And I had the feeling that that people were too stressed to go to a comedy club. Like, I can't remember specifically when it was, but I got offered a gig and I thought to myself, fuck doing a gig, man. Like, there's a darkness in the air in Glasgow. Like, people don't want to do this. Even punters don't want this. I just felt it. I felt a bad energy. I
heard Daniel Sloss talk about this, how he just spent the entire of lockdown just playing Xbox, and his girlfriend was a key worker, and every Thursday he would clap for her, but he would be sitting playing Xbox, and he felt so cheeky for not working when his girlfriend was going and making the money in the household, even though he's probably financially quite sound.
Yeah.
But he felt awful at the thought of going out and doing Zoom gigs and trying to make people laugh when it was such a dark time.
Yeah, I felt like that because I know a lot of nurses and people that work in the NHS, and I know someone that had a nervous breakdown through overworking, essentially. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing stand-up. I think I'm just going to do my bit here and self-isolate and do what's been asked of me. But I'm glad to be back into it now. I enjoy it. It's my calling. It's my voice. Sometimes shit happens. Like, it's a pandemic. Like,
I think everyone will agree who's listening, the boys in the room will say that you are the person that has the funny bones. Like, you literally do have them. You radiate funniness. Even when we fist bumped when you came in, like, I was almost trying not to chuckle. I don't know why. There was just some sort of funny energy about you. And I felt awkward to the point I said, my jumper matches my coffee cup. And I was like, that was not funny. And I don't know why I said it. And now he's going to think I'm the complete opposite of him.
You're in the red group as well, the both of us. No, mate, not at all. Like, I'm nervous now. I feel nervous. Like, it's just the way it is. Uh,
I also wanted to congratulate you on your recent anniversary of being sober. I know it's been, what, 7 years? 6 years?
6 years.
6 years.
Thank you very much.
I think everyone has experienced addiction at some point. Perhaps not to alcohol, but to phone usage, online pornography, alcohol, drugs. Like everyone's experienced it, whether first hand or second hand in their life. And I think not doing something that they previously always did for over 6 years, I think that's just a huge achievement and something to be entirely proud of. So
thank you, mate.
I just wanted to mention that in the podcast.
Thank you.
Can we talk about your journey with alcoholism before that? Like, when did you realise that you had to pack it in for good?
Again, it was through doing stand-up comedy. Like, I feel like I was living a very sheltered life of just being a wee guy in Glasgow from a working class family that never really had anything happen to me, apart from the usual thing that happens to working class Glaswegians. And then all of a sudden I'm put into this comedy environment of meeting people from different countries, sexualities, different skin colour, and everyone's trying to be funny and everybody's trying to make each other laugh. It's like a rock and roll environment of just new experience all the time. And they say you're born an alcoholic. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic, but I think I felt like a black sheep, and then I add alcohol to that situation, and I don't think it was a good mix. But through doing stand-up comedy, you know, with no drama background, because when you go up and do your first gig, you're standing up in front of 200 people. You can't prepare for that. You can't prepare for that level of nervousness. So see, when you start doing well, you know, people in the bar will give you cheap pints. You're getting pints for maybe £2 or £1.50 or £1 even, right? So you're up on the stage, you're coming off of this euphoric high, and then somebody says there's a free pint or a pint for £1. You're working in Asda at the time, you're skint, and you're getting pints for £1. So you're thinking, God, this is amazing. And then this fakeness of, oh, I'm nervous, so I'll have a pint to calm my nerves, which is not real. That doesn't help your nerves. And I've learned that through experience. If you're nervous, say you're doing a best man speech, right, and you're nervous and you have 6 pints, well, you're just drunk and nervous. It doesn't help your nerves at all. And then it dries your throat up. It makes you slower, doesn't make you as quick. So it doesn't help you.
Do you think because you were funny with alcohol initially, you thought, well, I need to be drunk to be funny, or I need to be drunk to go on stage because it's worked every other time?
I think it was a mixture of a lot of things. Maybe that's when I realised I was an alcoholic, because at one point I didn't care. I was just getting booze for free, and maybe I was just like, fuck it, I'm getting mad with it. And I've still done the gigs, I was still funny. But I think the moment for me was someone said, how many gigs have you done? And I think I was like 1,000 gigs, or maybe more than 1,000 gigs. And they were like, how many gigs have you done sober? And I thought, fuck. Like, well, how many have you ever done a gig without any booze? And I was like, no, I've always either had 2 or 3 pints before I went on. When you drink all the time, 2 or 3 pints was nothing to me. Like, it wouldn't even hit the sides. But I've never, that realisation of thinking, oh my God, I've done this over 1,000 times. Every single time I've done it, I've either had a couple of pints when I went on, and then I've get wrecked after it. So I was really embarrassed to kind of admit that. And then I was going towards earning money and getting more professional. And I did have a moment in my brain of thinking, right, if Bridges and Boyle are gigging 7 times a week, I can't get pissed 7 times a week. And I thought, if I keep doing this, I'm going to die. Like, I know I'm going to die, and it's not healthy. And then I thought, I'll still get pissed when I'm off. I'll get pissed when I don't gig. And then the buzz of gigging without alcohol was like a drug in itself. And then I realised it was better and it made me funnier and sharper. And then I went towards sobriety as well. So
What was your first step in making that change? How did you look for help
to go sober?
to go sober, mate? I know Samaritans played a good part in it at some point.
Yes, see, because it was so long ago, my memory is mixed up. So I phoned the Samaritans when I was young. I phoned the Samaritans when I was about 24, because I was too embarrassed to talk to anybody. And it was an amazing, beautiful experience. And that set me up to go to the doctors to ask for help. And then it was a kind of long road of mental health stuff, but I was still drinking. But the sobriety thing happened was essentially, I've spoke about this on my podcast. I was 7 months sober once without any help, and it was horrible. And then I went to my mate's wedding and I got wrecked, and it wasn't on purpose. And I woke up the next day and I thought, I can't believe I just get drunk there. Fucked everything. And it was just a horrible feeling of like, no matter how hard I try, I can't stop drinking. So I was floored for about a week, and Robert Florence asked us out for a drink.
The guy from Burniston?
Yeah. And Robert knows this, I've spoke openly about it. Robert was like, I want to work with you on something. Do you want to go out for a couple of drinks? And I was just burst. I was like, Robert, I think I might be an alcoholic, mate. That was the first time I ever said that. And I was like, I'm really scared about drinking and stuff. It's making me feel sick, mentally sick and physically unwell.
You said it poisons you?
Yeah. And he said, why don't you drink what I drink tonight? And I went out that night. Obviously, Robert is the same as everybody else. How do you know what an alcoholic is? I said that to my mates as well. Why don't you just have beer or have this or that? So I went out with him that night and I copied him. I had what he had, a couple of gins for the first time in my life, glass of wine and a vodka or something, and my last drink and something in my soul just done that. I'm done. I'm finished with this. And I knew that that was it. I knew that it was going to be hard, but just something just done that, you're done. And I've no drank since.
You just stopped?
Yeah.
I really actually think that's a case for a lot of things. Like sometimes you just become so sick of your own shit that you just, like you can't, there's no one else left to help you but you, and you just get sick of your own shortcomings, I guess. Yeah, because when I was younger, I was judgmental. I've got a lot of family members that are alcohol problems, and I always used to be like, I'll never be like them, I'll never be like you, or I know you're not allowed to say it anymore, but junkie bastards and this. I used to be like that. Never take drugs, I'll never do that. And then as I'm taking drugs, I'm like, I'll never be a junkie. As I'm taking drugs, I would say that, because my head was so warped. And I caught myself of being an absolute bullshitter, and I was just so embarrassed by it. I was like, I can't turn into that person. So I got help, and 6 years, like I only drank for 14 years. I want to live the rest of my life booze free. I don't think there's any shame in saying you're an alcoholic. If I need to say that I'm an alcoholic and live my life booze free, then fuck it. I'm an alcoholic. It's been the best thing that I've done. Do you think you'll ever touch alcohol ever again?
I'm drunk just now. No. You want some Eckies? I can't feel my legs. Never say never, because you don't know what's going to happen in life. You can't say never, but I don't want to drink. The only reason that I would drink alcohol would be through self-harming. It wouldn't be through enjoyment. It would be through self-harm. So there's no reason why I would drink alcohol, because I love my life. I'm happy. So I can never say never, but I don't intend to drink.
I'm sitting here with like much pride just hearing your story and hearing your journey. And one of the observations I made was perhaps alcohol filled a void at a time, and that void was perhaps insecurity. Do you think now that you are sober, do you think comedy fills that void? Like you're using comedy to distract a problem or a trauma or something. And I know your style isn't to make fun of someone else or poke fun at people. It's to actually make you the punchline of the joke.
Yeah.
Do you think you use comedy to deflect something away from yourself?
I don't think so. I think every stand-up comedian has an insecurity, but I don't think it's any different from any other person in the world. There's always this stereotypical thing about comedians with the sad clowns.
Yeah.
If you were to apply, everybody's insecure, everybody's fucked, everybody gets depressed. It's not just comedians, it's just a human nature. I get a drug-like high from making people laugh. I enjoy it. It's because I love comedy. I love movies. And I think a lot of it's got to do with my granddad. There's no sadness attached there with my granddad. He just loved comedy. He loved the Marx Brothers and all that type of stuff. And that planted the seed for me. So I don't think I do it for any, there's no hidden reasons. Other than just to make people laugh.
Mate, it's probably why you're so good at it then.
Well, thank you very much, mate. I take that as a massive compliment. I try not to think about it too much. I just want to make people laugh. My humour might get darker if I'm having a bad day, but I'm still trying to make people laugh,
I love listening to you on your podcast. I've heard Paul kind of sometimes co-host it with you. I think, I love podcasting. It's my favourite hobby. I don't do it because I want to try and cash in at any point. I do it because I get to speak with funny, interesting, complex characters like you. Why did you start podcasting?
Because Norm McDonald passed away. He's a Canadian stand-up comedian that used to be in Saturday Night Live, and he died of cancer. And he done his own show called Norm McDonald Has a Show on Netflix. And he was like the comedian's comedian. So there was a few things, see, because I was taking a break with COVID, I did reach a stage that I thought, do you know, I could never do this again. And I think I'm a lazy as well. So I was like, I could never go back to comedy again. Fuck Scot Squad. Pandemic's happening. I don't want to make people laugh during a pandemic. Working with my pals, doing other things, and I just thought maybe I'm just growing out of stand-up comedy. And then Norm McDonald passed away, and he was one of my heroes. Love him. Funny bones. I know we keep mentioning that. And because he followed me. I remember one night I was feeling quite sad, and when I feel sad, I go to comedy. And I was watching Trains, Planes and Automobiles.
I watched that the other night.
Amazing, right? And
Big John Candy, can't beat him.
John Candy, my hero. And then I watched Black Sheep with Chris Farley.
Not watched that.
Chris Farley's an amazing American comedian. And then I was watching Norm videos on YouTube. And it was just like I just went down this rabbit hole of, I've seen most of it, but it was just... It gave me this reminder of how amazing comedy can be. And I tweeted him one night and I never thought he would have responded, but it was something along the lines of, not in the best place right now, but I've been watching Norm McDonald videos and it's a feeling similar to when you watch John Candy or Chris Farley films. It's an amazing warmth in my
Warm is the
stomach.
word.
Aye, an amazing warmth that I've never experienced. Norm, I love you. And he responded the next day. He followed me on Twitter and we engaged in a conversation. And, just such an amazing guy, so likeable. We never spoke much, but it was a couple of times. Every time I spoke to him, I was like, this guy is a Rain Man-like knowledge of comedy. Just different level. So when I was taking my break, then he died, and it was like a gut punch because it was like, to me, it was like Elvis or Robin Williams dying or something. It was a major thing. And Kieran Burns asked me to come in and do his podcast. And I think I came in, I either did his podcast or we were going to try and set up a podcast, and it never quite worked out. And a couple of weeks went past, and I'm not too sure. I don't think I said to Paul, I think Paul said to me. Paul was like, why don't you do a podcast? And I had the Norm thing in the back of my head, and I thought, fuck it, life is for living. I can't get back on a stage. I never really gave it much thought process. I just thought, do this for an hour a week. Started talking about what was in my head. Paul started laughing behind the camera, and when he was laughing, I thought, yes, man, I'm getting him to laugh, and it kind of got the juices flowing again. But I don't really know why I set it up. That was a major reason. I've stuck with it, and I'm glad I do it, because people are always saying, what's your podcast about? And I don't, my stand-up's the exact same. My stand-up's not about anything. I just go up, I've got an hour to make people laugh, and I try to make people laugh for an hour. And that's the exact same with my podcast. Whatever comes up during that hour will come up. So I could talk about being called fridge for 40 minutes, or I'll talk about my mental health or whatever. But for me, as long as there's a punchline at the end of it, then I'm cool.
That must keep you so sharp for improv though, because that is essentially an improv hour.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lazy bastard, so I would rather improv for an hour than go and read something. Probably not good in the long term for things, but
what have you learned from podcasting? Is there anything that stood out to you since doing it?
Is there anything that
stood out to you whilst doing it? Something you've learned about yourself or learned about podcasting?
Yeah, I think I've learned to be. I think it's more professional. It's really nice about random people getting in touch as well, just messaging me and saying, oh, I'm having a bad day, your podcast made me escape for 40 minutes. And I'm like, I was talking about my arsehole for 40 minutes, mate. Like, but thank you very much. It's just made me realise that some people want to escape reality, and life can be quite tough. So they would watch a film or listen to a podcast or go to the cinema, like me. And I'm grateful that there's somebody that would listen to my podcast.
Mate, I would absolutely describe your podcast as escapism. I think I told you before we started recording that I was walking the dog down the street, listened to your podcast, listened to that goalkeeper story, and I was in bits, looking like a psychopath, laughing to myself in the street. But I was taken away from the rain, the wind, the dog pulling me, the dog taking a shit on the floor, people judging me. I was taken away from that story. And I guess podcasting is probably the platform that has the least virality. You don't do it because you're trying to cash in, you do it because you love it. Yeah. And I've heard you criticise podcasting in Scotland. You say most people just nab each other's guests and ask the same questions. And I think that's true. I'm guilty of that. You don't really have guests anymore, but you've probably been guilty of that in the time.
I have been.
So I'm going to reverse engineer this. What question would you want me to ask you?
How much am I getting paid for this?
£6 and a fish supper and your bus fare home.
No, I think I don't mean to criticise anyone. I know we're all in it together. Like I like to treat people the way I get treated, and I just want to make people laugh. There's no major reason behind it. I just want to be funny.
But I do think there is like most. I don't listen to many podcasts in Scotland because they are what I would describe them as very similar shades of each other. But you do have the runaway successes, and that's your podcast, because it's not like any other podcast that's out there. I'd like to hope perhaps my podcast is a bit different in terms of the guests I've had on. Perhaps might ask the same questions, but like I've had some wild guests on.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. No. It's just me ranting. It was more about I think my problem was people trying to take advantage of people.
Yep.
Like mental health podcasts. So it's like this fake persona of a mental health podcast. They would get someone on and they're not an expert.
I've seen that. Just to shine the light back on themselves.
Essentially. So that's what I had a problem with. But then I've noticed it with the Scottish podcasts. I mean, I'm the same. I've been the guest on everybody's podcast, and I know a million comedians that are amazing. So I know that people will probably watch me and they'll think, God, fucking Bobby for Scot Squad again. So it is what it is. And maybe I'm just thinking out loud. But
and I didn't mean that in a kind of interrogative way, like, you said this about podcasts, how dare you?
yeah.
But because I've observed the exact same thought.
Yeah.
Like, you see the same people doing the same things. And one thing I don't like about podcasting at the moment is I feel like, so we went through waves on social media of like foreign exchange trading was cool. Then like cryptocurrency was cool.
Yeah.
And I'm scared in case like podcasting has become that, because I see influencers who and I'm not going to criticize them. I don't think they're really great communicators. They don't ask good questions. They're probably somewhat not emotionally intelligent and quite self-absorbed. But I feel like podcasting is a platform that everybody wants a slice of now, and everyone feels entitled to it.
Yeah.
And I've seen people who've perhaps got PT businesses or makeup brands, and they feel entitled to this. Everyone should have a voice, but they don't typically make a good host.
Yeah.
And it's all, I'm scared in case I'm getting painted with that same brush. Do you have any concerns about that?
No, and I can understand why you would feel like that, but I would say to you, don't feel like that, because you've got your own journey and your own voice, and you're doing what you find interesting. So you can get whoever you want on your podcast. You're getting people listening to it. You're in a professional studio. If nobody wants to listen to it, they won't listen to it. It was kind of like, you know, the stand-up circuit. Everybody wants to be a stand-up, but you just keep doing what makes you happy. You're not exploiting anyone. That's the only thing I had was fake kind of mental health gurus talking about snake oil and stuff. Like, I'm against that.
But what you were against and not now is cold water therapy.
I'm full blown. I've got a tattoo in my neck. It says cold water therapist.
CWT.
And I wasn't even against that. I think I've spoke to Paul. It was I was against people who were charging for it.
Yeah, so
I wasn't against it for
the
free.
practice itself. Yeah. I found that funny though. Like, it was like it was almost like full circle, and you were like totally not indoctrinated, but you were like, as soon as you did it once, you were like, I'm in.
Yeah.
And you were, it sounded like you're almost frustrated with yourself, because you had, it was almost like a meme. It was a bit of a running joke.
Aye.
The cold water
Because
therapy
I'm an alcoholic. That's me 7 days a week now, called water therapy. I've never had a problem with it. They all keep getting in touch as well. Like, I told you it was amazing, but I'm like, I'm not charging people 50 quid to take them up to the campsies. So
yeah, I see people in like their back garden in like a really expensive ice bath when they could be just going in the shower or going in the bath for the same price.
Yeah.
And I feel bad for the people like capitalizing on it and like selling these products. I've done it before, but like just in the shower and stuff, and it does have its effects. But perhaps your next podcast sponsor will be like a cold water therapist or like some sort of ice bucket.
No, if they're charging 50 quid for people that need help. Anybody else can do it. Don't give a fuck.
Last question, mate.
Okay.
Last question.
Yep.
What's the funniest story you've ever been told?
That I've ever been told?
Ever been told or ever experienced?
A gym, see, in school, see the gym floor. It was getting replaced, and a health and safety hazard. They rolled up the gym floor and had it up against a wall, like a pillar. And my mate was like, "I bet you can't let that drap against you and hold it up." And I was like, "Who can he?"
Fridge can.
turns out I can't. So I went up and I tried to let it drop on me to hold it, and I flat out just done that, boom, like my body just done that, boom, with this fucking gym floor on me, this entire gym floor. So I'm lying on my back and I notice that my foot is there. And straight away I just hit shock. I'm like, I can't move. I'm like, please get this fucking off me. Birds are laughing and stuff, and I'm like, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm screaming at a wee bird, like, you're getting it. I'm gonna kill you. Get this off me. Never broke a bone or anything, but for I couldn't live that down for years. Johnny, a couple of teachers and all my pals had to pull this fucking gym flare off me. And I remember like getting in to see the bird that was laughing at me. I remember because at the time I was like 40 stone. This bird was like fucking that size. And I was like, you fucking laughing at me? Square going a bird after school. And I shat my pants quite a lot. I remember in school there was Ed's Diner. Did you ever have Ed's Diner?
No.
It was like a fake KFC. They used to sell this KFC chicken in school, and it was Ed's Diner KFC chicken. And I ate it once, and I was walking home from school and just get this intense shooting pain in my stomach. And before I knew it, I had to do that to my mate. Take my bag, give me my bag back the morrow at school. And I just burst into a sprint. Ran from Bishopbriggs Park to Morrison's, which was maybe a mile. And before I got into Morrison's, I shat my pants. Got to the toilet. I'm sorry to be disgusting, right? But it was like projectile green stuff coming out my arse. All over my shoes, my socks, my trousers. Had to wipe my arse with my trousers. In the disabled toilet in Morrison's. And I think I phoned my dad to come down and get me.
How could you leave the toilet with your whole outfit was covered in green?
My dad brought me down joggies.
You've got the most smug look in your face after saying that. like it wasn't that bad news.
You just have to own it. And see, that was the thing though. I went into school like the next day or 2 days later and they're like, we've took that off the menu because it was giving people food poisoning. And I was like, oh really? I never knew that. I never even had school. I used to wear the joggies to school as well. So literally shat myself that much I had to put the school trousers in the bin. I couldn't even wash them.
The first question I asked you was if you had a funny food poisoning story. And you didn't even begin to mention that.
I know, man, that was for the vaults. That's in the past. That was locked in the past. I can't believe it. Get stress thinking about that.
I'm going to start a new trend on this podcast where the guest asks the next guest a question. So my next guest is Noam Dar from the WWE. I know you're a huge WWE fan. You have been in wrestling yourself. I've heard the broken rib story. We can maybe touch on that actually before we wrap up. But before we end on that, what do you want him to answer?
He's a good lad. I've only met him a couple of times, but we talk quite a lot on online. Right, so a good question. Do you know, you can maybe edit this out because I don't know if he's public with it, but he's a vegan. Is he public about that?
Don't know. I actually don't know.
Maybe I'll leave that out.
Is that going to tarnish his online brand?
Yeah, I mean, I know some athletes that are vegan and they've kept it quiet. I know some fighters that have kept it in the down low.
Really?
They're like, don't tell anyone. They just think they're going to get judged, or say they lose a fight or something. If they lose a fight, everybody's going to be like, it's because you're vegan. I know there's so much shit attached to being a vegan that people would rather just not say it. Or plant-based. You can be plant-based. Right, I would say we'll keep it simple. Ask him if he's ever shat his pants and was he embarrassed about it and how did he fix the situation. Tell him that I shat my pants in school. And if he's ever shat his pants in school.
Oh well, I'm sure the director for communications at the WWE has to join the Zoom call. I'm sure they'll be...
Oh, really? Do us a favour, ask him if he's ever shat his pants. Ask the both of them if they've shat their pants. They must have listened to your the podcast. I mean, that guy that would suck a cock for the music festival, what a guy, man.
He was a legend.
What a fucking legend. I mean, I would almost just take a gobble off him. because I felt sorry for him. I'm like, I would hire that cunt on the spot, man. Like, he was willing to suck cock for the cause. I want him on my side, man. If he was a wrestler, I want him in my tag team. He was, and the fact that he was, I'm like, what a guy, man. Like,
what would his finisher be?
A blowjob. The blowjob. Nae horns. Nae hornies, it's called. What was that guy's name again?
Andy King.
Andy King, man. The Gobbler. There we go.
The Goblet.
Aye.
The Goblet.
Why am I getting a hard one? Sorry if this podcast has been a bit serious, talking about my childhood and stuff, but we tried to finish it halfway. Norm McDonald shitting his pants and me getting a gobble off Andy boy.
Could be the other way around.
What?
No, I'm Dar giving you a blowjob. Oh, Darren, honestly, there's been some really key lessons in this about like how to enter comedy and stuff. It's been serious at times, but
yeah,
like absolutely wrapped up with hilarity, mate. Honestly, I was looking forward to this because I've been a huge fan of you. I didn't ask you on because you've been on every other podcast, because I'm actually a fan. And when I found out you actually had a podcast, which I wasn't actually aware of until I seen Paul share a picture of the setup he had for the studio, went balls deep into it. Loved every single episode I listened to. So, mate, thanks for coming on. It means the world.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for having me. Shout out to your family in Australia and everybody else that likes Scot Squad, and your two psycho mates that are sitting staring at me, no blinking. No, I was kidding on, by the way. That was a joke. Aye.
If the people want to get in touch online, find your podcast, where can they do it?
Just follow me on Twitter, Darren Connell 87. Add me on Facebook, Darren Connell. The podcast is called Straight White Whale, but if you just put Darren Connell into the search bar, my stuff will come up. So,
Mate, thank you.
Thank you, mate.